Hello, welcome to another Midweek Thought. Now, you may not know this, but I'm actually colourblind. It doesn't stop me enjoying myself. For example, just before lockdown, I went to see a wonderful production of Joseph and his amazing brown coat. That's not entirely true, and in fact I'm not colourblind, but I would like to talk about Joseph today. Now, what's your favourite Bible story? Those of you who came to the series we did on the 7 on Acts will know that the book of Acts is absolutely one of my favourites. And the book of Esther, the story of Esther, is very popular. The stories of the goings on in exile in Daniel are very entertaining, and of course ultimately there's the story of the life of Jesus. But a couple of chums and I over the last few months have been meeting up on Zoom every week to study stories in the Old Testament. And we've looked at Jonah, and we've looked at David, and we're currently about half the way through Joseph. Now, Joseph's a story that many of us will be familiar with because of the musical, of course. And it's very understandable why young Tim and young Andrew decided to look at that or make a musical out of that story, because it's quite a ripping yarn. It's quite a long story. It's actually about 14 chapters of Genesis, which is getting on for a third of the whole book. And we read of Joseph being born into a pretty chaotic family. The father, Jacob, has 12 sons and a daughter by 4 different women. His 2 wives and 2 servants of his wives. And Joseph is the favoured son, and his brothers really resent the favour that he's treated with by his father, including giving him the lovely coat. So ultimately they conspire to get rid of Joseph, and they sell him into slavery, and he gets taken to Egypt. And he actually prospers in Egypt. He becomes quite an influential member of the royal management team. And but then following the unfortunate events with Potiphar's wife, Joseph, despite being innocent, is sent into prison. And while in prison he finds himself locked up with 2 other officials of the household. The executive board there doesn't seem to be doing very well, does it? The baker and the so-called cup-bearer, the person who was responsible for dealing with drinks. A responsible position because of paranoia about poisoning, etc. And during that time, each of these gentlemen have a dream, and that's the point at which I'd like to pick up the story. So let's turn to our Bibles if you'd like, or I'm going to turn to my Bible at least. And we pick up in chapter 40 of Genesis, and we pick up actually in verse 6. So reading from verse 6. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, who were in custody with him in the master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Jesus said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. And you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as he used to do when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favourable interpretation, he He said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." "This is what it means," Joseph said. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Nice. Doesn't say that in the Bible. Now the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and of the chief baker in the presence of the officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. You know, it's often instructive, isn't it, to try and relate to characters in a story. And we may relate here to Joseph having done something helpful for someone else and just being forgotten about and left to lie in the prison. But I'd just like us to think today about us as the cupbearer, the one who forgot Joseph, and ask ourselves, are there people who have helped us in our journeys, in our life, and that we have forgotten? Life has moved on and we've just grown apart, if you like. And I wonder, particularly if we think of people that have been important in our coming to faith, that have helped us along that journey, that we have forgotten. And perhaps we can reach out to those people, just remember them and act on them, and thank them and encourage them. They're our Josephs, if you like. Do you have a Joseph that you could think of today? Secondly, there's someone who has done an enormous amount for each one of us, and that, of course, is Jesus. Do we sometimes kind of forget Jesus as well? Do we lose our sense of awe and our sense of gratitude? Is it less vibrant in our lives than perhaps it should be? Again, maybe we can commit to refreshing our Christian walk. And then finally, we may know of people who did have a faith but who have drifted away. The prodigals, we call them, don't we? Maybe you know someone that you can think of who used to be a follower of Jesus but is no longer. And maybe again we can reach out to them and encourage them and to draw them back to their faith. So let's reach out to those who have helped us. Let's draw back the prodigals. And let us rekindle our excitement and gratitude for what Jesus has done for us. And we can do that, of course, by reading God's Word, by reading the many wonderful stories, each of which tells us more about God and points us to Jesus. Stories such as the one of Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Amen. Well, have a good week, and hopefully I'll see you soon, in person. Tatty bye.